In other words, the more extreme the class, the less it fluctuates. This is a human phenomena. If you are middle class, it means that you are willing to change. You are not working class and you are not upper class. So you will mix more with different classes of people. Likely you travel more than the upper class or the working class. In other words, throughout your own lifetime, you are more likely to change, economically speaking, mentally speaking, and especially throughout generations, than the bottom class, in other words, working class, or the upper class, the top class, in other words, upper class. Thereof, that means that middle classes, like me, even upper middle classes, are less likely to keep their things throughout generations than the upper classes. The working class are not keeping their things because of their mentality and the way they live. They cannot really keep it. Not that they mixed a lot or changed class. Also, a huge phenomenon happened. We have to think, how come in 1900 most people are working class in England, and how come today only 5 to 10% are working class? And usually those people absolutely do not work, and thus they are known as lower class, but never mind. The working class did not suddenly disappear and suddenly the middle class multiply and have more children. Simply more people went from working class to middle class. So those people, logically speaking, they absorbed the middle class and thus became the middle class. Thereof, they took from them the middle class of yesterday, of 1900. And by they took from them, I mean they took their mentality, their way of speaking, their way of conducting themselves and of philosophically leading their lives, and physically took their things, physically acquired their belongings, including clothing, including those clothes that were not given to poorer persons and which had survived. In other words, the upper middle class formal attire kept for sentimental reasons, and or also kept for other formal occasions if they might occur again. In other words, those black or very dark formal garments of 1850 or 1840 precisely to 1920, rather easily available, only they do not come in modern sizes because everyone is so much smaller then. That is the whole thing. Just explain it. Took almost an hour to explain it. I explained it as fast as I could. This is really the logic. And I give a real life example how that works. Again, a real life example from my family, from this generation, from my generation, from my brother. I have only one full-blooded brother, comes from the same father and family. Mother, I mean. This brother, that I'm not in contact with anymore since many years, that brother, he was brought up with me. I was born in an upper middle class, but really with a lot of money. My father, by the time I was born, I was the last child of my mother and father. So I was the fifth child of my father because he had one son that I never knew and hate him, and it comes from another wife. And then he had 4 children, including me, with my mother. Then I was born in 96. By that time, he was probably earning to have the same lifestyle he could have with inflation today, and also with changed money. It went from francs, new francs, to euros. In 2002, they changed it to euros. But to be able to have the same lifestyle and spendings, and what he earned then would be the equivalent today of earning about 50,000 euros per month. Now, France is heavily taxed. It was already heavily taxed then. Less than now, but already so. But still, this is humongous. 50 euros. Maybe not when I was born, but by the time of when he changed and he went to a private clinic, he was probably earning by 2002 for certain, he was earning, I would say, 50,000 euros per month. Per month! 50,000 euros. Not in real life, he was earning probably less, but it would be the equivalent today of earning that, at least. If the same thing was to be transported to 2023. So, we are very well to do. And he received a good education as in high academically, and he was a doctor and everything. So this is clearly upper middle class. But even more than Dr. Watson, because a doctor, an oncologist in 2002, is seen as much better than a doctor in the 19th century. It's almost upper class. So it's like border, it's very high upper middle class, almost upper class, like almost the low upper class. Also not due to only the money, but also due to the education the parents have. My mother had a very long education. She was a psychologist, and she also had what is it called? Proper, it takes 2 years or 3 years to have a license in graphology, so she can tell the mentality. She worked for the like criminal police at one point, so, or at least he had them. So anyhow, these are much, even for 21st century, much higher in terms of social ladder because of the education, the approach to life, and the money available, and thus all the objects that go with it, car and all, than the vast majority of people, although they were already middle class, are not as higher middle class, and most of them are not even upper middle class, and even the upper middle class are not as high upper middle class. But then what happens? One would think that all the belongings, pass on from one son, daughter, to just split them between the sons and daughters. So eventually all the belongings, except those thrown away because they were garbage or whatever, they more or less is passed on. Like all the belongings of my father is an accumulation of what he bought and what his own father bought, and a bit of what his own father bought that also passed on to his brother, as in my father's brother, and etc. Like for generations, and it accumulates, and then when he dies, I get a bit of it. A sister gets a bit of it, another sister gets a bit of it, and it's another sister, and then if I had a son, he would get a bit of, it would get everything I had, which was a bit of my grandfather, but if I had two children, he would get half. It was not really worked like that. How it actually worked in my family. My father moved from the central area of France when he was very young to study in Paris. Then he never went back. It was called Coventry, which is very in the center of France, very in between the north and the south. He came from an upper middle class family. His own father was a doctor, so he was like the wealthiest man in town, almost. And they had a big family home, which was like a tiny mansion, like a very beautiful family home that dated back to the, I think, at least mid-19th century. With a lot of early to mid to max late 19th century furniture because they were a bit old-fashioned. When his father died in the early 90s before I was born, the children, so him and his 3 siblings, started throwing everything away. My mother managed to save it because she insisted. She saved a lot of furniture that she brought to their house where I was brought up in the suburbs of Paris. Then, my parents, this is 2009, my mother sells her own house, which had a lot of furniture and stuff, and literally every single thing to the last pencil was brought into a cargo boat to Dubai, which explains all my antique furniture here. But out of all that furniture, nothing except one tiny thing I managed to sell up to there, which dates from the mid-19th or early, like probably 1840s, which belonged to like the grandmother of the mother of my father. This is the only thing that she had in her house that belonged to my father's family, although it was her house. That thing moved to Dubai. Then in 2015, my father asked for divorce. So she has to accept. The house was under his name, his own house that he had in France, with the old furniture that my mother had managed to save from a few of it, like less than a quarter, less than a fifth, maybe less than a tenth, from the old mansion that from when his father died. And she also had managed to save more when my grandmother, my father's mother had died. The siblings threw away all the papers of the old house and threw away all the furniture. My father only took 2 pipes and a coat of his own father or my grandfather. He only took 2 pipes and a coat. That is it. Everything else was taken by his siblings. More than less than a tenth of it was not even thrown for other random people to pick up. They burnt all the books because they wanted to hide stuff. They burnt all the books and paperwork. Most of the furniture. So, my mother had not managed to save anything from that time because she was in Dubai, stuck with me. So he only took, for me, how nice, 2 pipes and a coat. I still have. And my mother, but she had saved furniture back in the 90s when his father had died, right? But what happened? He asked for divorce in 2015, or 6 years after his own mother died.